Hey everyone, it's Brett Hornby here, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Finally get around to making this video. I'm going to talk about and share my experiences that it only took 42 years, but this Western Canadian born, Calgary raised person myself has never been to Toronto until now. I mean, technically, I guess you could say I was sort of in Toronto back in 2017 when I was flying to Ottawa for the 105th Grey Cup, and I think the reason why I had to stop in Toronto at Pearson to connect to an Ottawa plane was I think there was no non-stop flights from Calgary to Ottawa at 6 in the morning. But for many, many years, I've always wanted to go to Toronto. And being that I've been born and raised in Western Canada, it's a little far to just go there for the weekend, and costs have gone up to go anywhere. However, there's many things I guess I can also review, and a few things that have changed when I went to Toronto, and it's nice that sometimes you make plans and it actually happens. So 2024, I plan to make a trip to Toronto, as I was wanting to not only finally see the city as a proud Calgarian and sports fan. I was thinking the perfect time to go would be in the summer, in August, and I was thinking what the ideal time to happen one year would be when the Stampeders are on the road there, and then that same time that I'm there, catch a couple Blue Jay games. Well, it finally happened in 2024. As the dates that I went to Toronto it was Thursday, August the 8th. I left for Toronto, and I'll explain how I got there. And then I came back to Calgary late in the evening on Wednesday, August the 14th, so I was able to come back to Calgary in time to catch when the Stampeders were home taking on the Ottawa Red Blacks. I mean, the plan is that I wanted to, obviously the catalyst was the Calgary Stampeders playing in Toronto, and then actually there were two Blue Jay games that I went to, both times they were playing the Oakland Athletics. So how I made this trip all come together, and I decided to go to Toronto, because it probably would have cost me just as much or even more than it would be for me to go to my usual place at Mount Robson when you factor in renting a car, gas, and hotels. And I might have changed the leaf, no pun intended, turned a new leaf actually on hostels. That's how I was able to make this trip as cheap as possible, is I was able to book this trip with redtag.ca, and I was able to bundle both my flight and stay together, and I actually was able to make it all under $1,000, which pretty good. But when I was looking it took me a while to figure out, well, is this trip ever going to happen? And the other key thing with redtag.ca was the fact that I was able to pay the installments and paying off with uplift. That was key, because with cost of living, inflation, and that, it's a lot harder to just come up with money all up front, or even the amount to save when you make the plans, and when the trip happens, have it all paid off in time for the trip. I was able to have that option for that trip to happen. And then when I was looking for a place to stay, I wanted to be close to the football game, the baseball game, and of course I finally had to go to the Hockey Hall of Fame and see Maple Leaf Gardens. Everything was downtown, and there was a couple other attractions I didn't get to, which I'll explain, that is buying a future trip from this trip. But I wanted to obviously stay downtown, and not only living in Toronto is expensive, staying in Toronto is expensive, So first, when you say, yeah, I want to go to Toronto from this day to this day, and I also need a place to stay, of course, the first places they recommend is like, the Fairmont right at Union Station, or the Sheraton, or Holiday Inn, actually that's right next to Maple Leaf Gardens, but I don't have over $500 a night to spend for one night and to do any activities. So the next tier down was I was looking at, the run-of-the-mill mid-hotel, family hotels like Super 8, Motel 6, maybe Best Western, Holiday Inn Express kind of quality, where I usually stay in those hotels when I'm on the road because it's just a clean, decent place to live that feels like home, and you get free breakfast. But then those hotels were way, way out in the suburbs near the Pearson airport, or in like Scarborough or Mississauga, because I wasn't going to have a car. I don't have a car. I'm not going to rent a car. Toronto definitely is not a city I want to drive in, even if I was a regular resident there, I should say. So I was going to do everything I was going to do was going to be on TTC. And when I saw that every day, if I stayed at that hotel, I was going to spend an hour and a half, 2 hours one way on public transit just to get in the city to go to the game or go to any attractions, and then do that again to go back to my room. That wasn't going to do. So I had to settle for a hostel. And the three hostels that kept coming down to there was the Palmerston. I looked at some reviews and I was like, ugh. And then there was the Parkdale Hostelry that had even worse reviews. And the one that I actually stayed in, and I'm glad I did, and I'm going to say turn a leaf, as I stayed at the Same Sun in Kensington. So I was in the heart of Kensington. Interesting, we have a Kensington in Calgary, but it's all based off here's a Kensington in England. So I was in the Kensington market near, it was a College Street and Augusta Avenue. That's where it is in Toronto. Where I was close to the 406 or the 506 streetcar, and definitely loved the streetcars that was there. But I was saying, well, in order to make this trip to happen and still have a little fun, I stayed in a hostel first time, and I did kind of think for years, I was just thinking, yeah, you're sleeping in a room with a bunch of strangers snoring and farting and coming in all hours of the day. But I watched enough videos that prepared me to stay in a hostel, and it actually wasn't that bad. I got over that fact very quickly, that I was in a room with a bunch of other strangers, and I did kind of feel that, potential for communal meeting people if you stayed in a hostel before. I mean, they had private rooms at that Same Sun, but we're talking about $250 a night, and that was on my budget. It was still $75 a night for 6 nights that I stayed in, but hey, that's how I made it work with the flight. But even just in my room alone, I was in the 8-dorm room, and I was able to get a lower bunk. I had to change rooms. The person was nice enough to allow that. It was a little tough for me to get up in the top bunk, being my size. And I still figure out most of the people that stayed in the hostel were, let's say, in the 25 to 34 crowd. I did see some people that looked like my age or a little older, but they probably did spend more money to stay in the big private suites. But I was just perfectly fine staying in a hostel. Had a place to sleep. In either way, even if you were in a private suite or in the dorm that I was in at this particular hostel, you'd still have to use the communal shower and bathroom, and I didn't find that much of an issue all the nights I was there. But I was just blown away that, I still represented Canada, and actually at the hostel front desk you saw a world map, and they put a number on a particular country. How many people from that country, and actually Canada, every day that I was there, had the highest number. But the whole time I was in that room, there was only one person that was from Canada. He actually was from Calgary but lives in Red Deer, I believe. But in my room the whole time I was there, I had people that were from Japan, Spain, France. And I remember when I was checking out, and I did unfortunately had a little bit of a travel cold, so I was snorting and coughing a bit. And sorry, Paul, everyone was, oh, good, I wrote that off. I mean, I did hear people snoring anyway, but I'd say it wasn't like I was enjoying it, not sleeping. But I remember the last person that I was talking to was a young lady, and she was like, yeah, I'm from Australia. I'm like, wow. And then I would see, oh, I'm just from Calgary, which it's still fairly far away from Toronto. And I like how most people say, yeah, Calgary, that's a little west of here. And I kind of like to say, yeah, I am definitely west of here. Not to Vancouver, Victoria coast, but I say just east of the Rocky Mountains. So give an idea where it's from. But it's like, I'm Canadian, but I'm from the other side of the country. But I mean, I just felt the communal aspect. Just because I was also, traveler on a shoestring budget too, just in a different stage of my life. I didn't think I had that opportunity with college and staying home for school. That I don't think I would have been cool with me done going to school and traveling for a couple of years. So that wouldn't have worked with me. But the hostel definitely kind of felt a little bit of kids camp and college. And I definitely would stay there again. And now that I've stayed in a hostel, I was able to work out the nooks and crannies. I mean, I was able to slide my luggage underneath the bed because the lockers weren't big enough, but I had my luggage and my dirty clothes in there, thinking I don't think it would be low enough to take that. I had all my other valuables in the locker, and I was able to still use, and as I was using the stuff, clothes go in the luggage, and that's how I was able to navigate around that. So I could be a little more prepared for potentially us in the future, but I would actually want to stay there again. And the Same Sun in Toronto. And first heard of the Same Sun actually when I first saw it in Kelowna. And I know there's also one in Banff. There's one in Vancouver, but it burnt down. I hear they're trying to finally get it reopened. But then I see there's a bunch of hostels in California, like Hollywood, Ocean Beach, even San Diego. I have to go back to San Diego and New Orleans and Montreal. So it's definitely, I like the Same Sun. And then it was peak season, so the next time I plan to go to Toronto, potentially for a March break, that room would be $55 a night. So I'll be happy to stay there. So that's my so far experience with the hostel. I was busy with my own, agenda. I mean, half the time I was there was for sporting events, and then I had the Monday after the Stampeders game, Argonauts game, and then the two Blue Jay games, and then the Monday I did the Maple Leaf Gardens, checked out that, and then the Hockey Hall of Fame. And then Tuesday was the day I wound up sleeping in too late, and all I did that day was just see the legislature and Union Station, and then both the Monday and Tuesday nights I did spend some time at Dundas and Square until sunset. But that was the hostel. Flying to Toronto, the other thing I used for the first time was Porter Airlines, and I definitely loved Porter Airlines. I think they definitely have a potential to expand even more and be like a third airline in Canada. Just basically we're still mostly stuck with Air Canada or WestJet. But I wanted to try Porter because it looked intriguing. It looked like they pride themselves on being an economy airline, but not make you ashamed of it. Not like nickel and dime you and provide crap service, like Flair I hear, for example. But they have no middle seat. They have premium snacks and beer. Of course, it's pop and water, but I can have that any other time. So of course I had beer on the plane with my premium snacks. And then in Toronto, there's actually two airports. Everybody knows about Pearson, the code YYZ. However, I did not fly out of Pearson. I actually flew out of Billy Bishop, the island airport for a couple of reasons. One, because I was anticipating beautiful scenery, which I got that more so leaving to go to Calgary, and the fact that it just appealed to me a little more to be in a cutesy smaller airport where I grab my bags, walk underneath it. They have a pedestrian tunnel underneath the lake because you got the terminal and then you got the area where you part where everyone meets or parts in that where cabs or pickup zone. But they also have a ferry. I did the pedestrian tunnel both ways. It just appealed to me a lot more to do that, do a short walk through the park, and get on a streetcar. And then I was a streetcar away to get to College Street and a couple blocks away to my hostel. However, because I was flying from Calgary, and the fact that Billy Bishop is a smaller airport, there was a little bit of a catch. I flew to and from Montreal first in the big plane for Porter, and then I had to switch planes to a smaller propeller plane, I meant to say, from Montreal to Toronto, Billy Bishop Airport, which there is YTZ, that's the airport for Billy Bishop. But I felt, despite the layover, I mean it was an hour and a half, flying to Montreal, then to Toronto, and then it wound up being 3 hours from flying from Montreal to Calgary on the way back because the flight was delayed by a half an hour, but that was because the other flight was delayed to getting to Montreal. But mostly it was on time, the service was great. I know on the way to Montreal, or on the way back, they had 2 runs of snacks and beer. And then they had a couple beers, they had the steam whistle and the bow, and I kind of had fun with the one lady that saw me again on the flight to Montreal. I was going to Toronto. That I said, "What beers you have?" And I said, "I'll take that one." And then when she came back, she knew I wanted the other one. So, and then she asked me when I was boarding I said, "Which you like better?" Actually, I like the Bow beer, Beau, a little more than Steam Whistle, but they're both good beers that they had on the plane. But I'm going to say Porter Airlines. I mean, unfortunately, it was 3 weeks prior that glitch happened, that Microsoft glitch that they were affected. But in terms of flying, the service, it all worked out. Actually, Porter owns Billy Bishop, but if you decide to want to fly in and out of Billy Bishop from Calgary, you're going to have to do a layover. But I figured the amount of time that I spent laying over would have been about the time I would have to spend to take a longer train from Union Station to Pearson and then figure my way around in the biggest, busiest airport in the country. Because actually Pearson is the busiest airport in Canada. Calgary's 4th. I think it was Montreal 2nd and then Vancouver's 3rd. Billy Bishop's actually still 9th for the busiest airport, and there's the No Jets Go group that's always pushing back. It's usually all the waterfront people that are so worried about, expanding the airport and the noise, but it just didn't feel like I was walking to and from the airport when I went to Billy Bishop, and I'm going to always try to fly in and out of there if possible in Toronto, especially if everything you want to see and do is in Toronto. And, you fly in, you see the Rogers Centre, the CN Tower, and all the buildings, Lake Ontario. I mean, that's worth it alone, even if it is a detour and a layover away from not flying. I mean, they do fly, domestically or internationally as well. I know that Billy Bishop goes to, I think, Chicago O'Hare, but you have a choice of 2 airports. And for me, considering I was downtown and I only want to see and plus it's cheaper for fare because standard fare for TTC is $3.30 and you have 2 hours, where they have an express train that goes from Union Station to Pearson and back with a few stops in between. I think it's $12.50. Don't quote me on that. Based on videos I saw, and it could be a couple of years old video. Of course, prices and that always go up, but I just felt it was more convenient, made more sense, and the scenery for me to fly in and out of Billy Bishop. So yeah, I like Port Airlines. I'll definitely stay in a hostel again with same son, and redtag.ca was a great way for me to book my trip to make this happen. And then the fact that I was going to use the TTC everywhere I went, I was able to download my Presto card. It's called Presto in the Toronto area, TTC, to pay for your transit. It definitely felt weird with the streetcars at first. How some of them, you have a list of platforms, but not deep platforms like compared to the LRT in Calgary. But it seems so weird that at first, where the train stops and then suddenly it's like you walk out on the street. So, but you eventually get used to that. But I have an extensive streetcar network. I know the 510 was down at the time, and that was the route that I used a few times, to get from College Street and Spadina to Avenue to get to like Rogers Center and back. But they have enough buses. 506, that was one that went through, College Street, and actually that's what took me to Maple Leaf Gardens. And I remember it was a 19 that took me to Hockey Hall of Fame, and also Nathan Phillips Square, the City Hall. And then it was the 509 that I remember it took me to, there was a 509 and 511, but I remember the 509, that was the one that took me to the BMO Field, and also the stop that closest to Billy Bishop to walk. And it was like a 5-minute walk from the station to the airport. It was, if you weren't stopping to take pictures of scenery, it was more like 10-15 minutes, but it could be a 5-minute walk if you were just on a mission walking. But I definitely enjoyed that. And actually, one of the perks of the Presto, which depends on the time of the year, but it worked all year round, that I was able to get 20% off my admission in the Hockey Hall of Fame, which that was my must do, the Hockey Hall of Fame. The facade in that was actually being renovated at the time, so I didn't get to see the facade, the side of the building, but I saw that, the sculpture on the outside where the players are on the bench. And I'm going to say it's a little bit of a maze to get to the Hockey Hall of Fame, because it's in, it's called Brookfield Place. There is a Brookfield Place also in Toronto. I mean, Brookfield Place is the tallest building in Calgary right now. But you walk in, and you see the Hockey Hall of Fame store, and then you see a Tim Hortons, and it has all the, themed Canadian team stuff from the Hockey Hall of Fame. But in order to actually get into the Hockey Hall of Fame, to get into the museum, you got to go downstairs. And I remember you walk in the, Brookfield Place, you get this big atrium. Eventually there's a stairwell that takes you down to a food court. Then you got to try to find your way around the food court to eventually say, that's where the Hockey Hall of Fame is, where you enter. It's almost like an anchor store. And then I definitely took my time and took a ton of pictures in that, and see the artifacts and see all the Hockey Hall of Fame. You still had, the 2023 class highlighted, and on the windows I saw it from the inside in the Grand Hall, and oh man, that Grand Hall is a beautiful building where you have all the trophies and all the plaques of all the players and broadcasters in the Hockey Hall of Fame, and the trophies, including this thing called the Stanley Cup, the most impressive championship trophy in all of sports. So I got a picture of that, and try to get pictures of the awards that I remember the Flames were there. I tried to get pictures of all the Calgary Flames representatives in the Hockey Hall of Fame. And of course this was a couple weeks before, unfortunately, the Johnny Gaudreau, but I did see the Lady Byng trophy and did get a picture of, it worked out 2 out of 3 years. A Calgary Flame won the Lady Byng, because when Johnny Gaudreau won the Lady Byng trophy a couple years prior, that was, 2017 that Gaudreau won, because it was 2015 that Yuri Hudler won it, and I know Joey Mullen also won it, I think it was 1987, so, you get to see all the awards. picked out. Saw Jack Adams and saw Daryl and Bob Hartley, and then of course even saw the Broadcasters Hall of Fame and saw Peter Marsh plaqued and saw the trainers with Jim Bearcat Murray. So I was able to look at everything from a Calgary Flames point of view, and it was even nice. They had some artifacts on for Doug Gilmour. Of course, most knows where he played for the Maple Leafs, but they shared some hockey pants that he wore as a Calgary Flame, so they at least acknowledged that. And then they had a Jerome McGinley display, and they showed a jersey that it's highlighted and said Jerome McGinley wore this jersey in Game 6 of the 2004 Stanley Cup Final. We all know about that game, but yeah, the Hockey Hall of Fame. It was awesome, but before I did that, I went to Maple Leaf Gardens, and I was in awe of Maple Leaf Gardens. I don't have any disdain or allegiances with the Toronto Maple Leafs. I mean, some love to hate them, but I was acknowledging the historic significance of the building. I mean, it was repurposed. That the 2 stories, they have Loblaws, the grocery store, and of course I had to ask the clerk in aisle 25 to take a picture of me pretending I'm dropping the puck, and I made sure I brought a puck that was a Calgary Flames puck that Ryan McDonald actually signed, so I had the Maple Leafs in mind, and I showed that to the clerk, and so I took this from Calgary, and I want to pretend I was dropping the puck because they marked the center ice in aisle 25 in the grocery store, and everywhere in the grocery store they show like artifacts and pictures and facts of what happened in this building, who performed in this building, because it was more than just a place to go to watch Maple Leaf games. I mean, Muhammad Ali, boxed in that venue, and then you had like Elvis, the Beatles, just to name a few. They highlight like everything in Maple Leaf Gardens in the grocery store. And then you see the atrium, you still see the side of the building that you could tell that used to be the old stairwell, the old windows. Then they have these seats that they still were able to put together, made a blue Maple Leaf. And then, I mean, the second floor you see a Joe Fresh and an LCBO. However, there's another part of the building that it's the Matheny Athletic Center from Ryerson University. The other part of that tour was I was able to go up to the 3rd and 4th floors in there. More, they show everything about facts of Maple Leaf Gardens, all the events that took place there. But eventually they have a rink, because they actually were able to still have a hockey rink on levels 3 and 4. It's a smaller rink, and you have to go up to the 4th floor where I was able to get into the actual rink. And I was definitely in awe that I was walking around that you still see the iconic roof inside Maple Leaf Gardens. So I got to see that, and I mean, it's one of those things that you've seen many times on Hockey Night in Canada over the years, and I mean, it was the last of the original 6 teams to play in their venue during its heyday, because it was 1931 when it was open, and it was 1999 that the Maple Leafs last played in there before they moved to the current Air Canada Centre. And also the Toronto Huskies were a first professional basketball team to actually represent Toronto, not the Raptors, but it was a very brief history for the Huskies. So there was a lot of history just in that building. It's a historic site. I wish, they can reconsider plans for the Saddledome in Calgary, because it'll definitely be a sad day as we're getting the new Scotia Place started and built for the opening of the 2027-28 season, that immediately the Saddledome is going to get demolished. I loved what Toronto was able to do to Maple Leaf Gardens, and I know that I think one of the provisions that they had was that building couldn't be used as a sports venue again, but basically on the outside it still kind of had the old brick and marquee. It still said Maple Leaf Gardens. It's tried to preserve some of it on the outside, but then on the inside it's totally different. But they definitely showed what was still there, so I was definitely overjoyed as a sports fan. I mean, I guess you could say for the football game at BMO Field the Friday night, that's the only time I saw people wear Argonauts gear was at the game, but it's right near the exhibition grounds. And actually the P&E, or no, the CNE, P&E is Vancouver, the Canadian National Exhibition, that was being set up because it was that Friday of that week it was starting. But at least they had the Ferris wheel. You saw, being built up, kind of like what you see Stampede Park before the Stampede. So they were still setting that up at the exhibition grounds near as the Coca-Cola Coliseum where the Marlies play. I mean, unfortunately, the Calgary Stampeders lost that game 39-24. Don't blame me for the losing streak because the Stampeders have not won as of this recording since I went to Toronto. Because the week before we beat Toronto, but we had to come back in the fourth quarter by us being down by 17. But Calgary lost, it was 39-25, because I remember it was a 14-point loss. And then the 14 points, the 2 touchdowns that we lost by, one was we threw a pick 6, and that was the only interception that Jake threw that day, and a lot of punt return for a touchdown by Janarian Grant. But Calgary actually played all right despite that. But it was definitely, there was only 13,000 fans at the attendance, but they had metal stands, and they definitely encouraged fans to stomp their feet. When Toronto was on, or Calgary's on offense, and Toronto's on defense, so felt the atmosphere there. I didn't like the result, obviously. And then the 2 Blue Jay games I went to, the Saturday and Sunday. The Saturday was a 3 p.m. first pitch on, this is Mountain Time, or Eastern Time. I'm on Mountain Time, so it was 1 o'clock for me. That wasn't necessarily the best of games because the Blue Jays lost 1-0. There was only 1 home run, and they had to review that home run. I think it was like in the 6th inning because it just barely hit the warning track. I was actually sitting up in the 524 or 525 section, and actually it's a great value. I mean, yeah, it's a little bit up, but you still got to see pretty much 95% of the field. If you would have to lean over and stand up a bit if there was a pop fly that was behind home plate for a catcher to play. But other than that, it was unobstructed. And I also sat in, I think it was section, 211 at BMO Field. But the 3 games that I bought a ticket for, I think all 3 of the games I was paid $130, $140 for. I mean, I tried to find the best seat where you can still get the value. But that was the football game, the baseball game. However, if you told me that for my first Blue Jay game, that it'd be the bottom of the 9th, and Vladimir Guerrero comes to bat, and he represents the winning run, and you stop there, I'd be excited. I at least got that. And I did record some few at bats, including that at bat, and I almost got spoiled. That Vladimir Guerrero Jr., he was at bat. He would have been the winning run. And it looked like he almost got a home run, but it was just right foul. And then he got, I think he batted out, or not sure if he got struck out or batted out. But at that time, at least he had a single that he had a 23-game hit streak going. And then the next day, the roof was open for the Saturday game. The next day, Sunday, it was a family fun day. It was raining a bit, so the roof was closed. So I got to experience both the Rogers Center with the roof open and closed. And got to see both of that. Like I said, I liked where I sat. Considering the price, it was a little high up, but it wasn't at the back. But I was able to get to pretty much see the whole view, because on Ticketmaster you had to pick, and then it's like, oh, this looks good. Oh, but it's instructed this view, and it costs more. But and then I would say for the fan, the Blue Jays lost. I think it was, I believe it was 8-4. I think it was the second game. But Oakland scored 6 runs in the top of the first, so the Blue Jays were already down 6-0 before they even had their first at bat. At least I got to see one Blue Jays home run on Sunday, not from Vladimir Guerrero Jr. I think I understand that game on Friday when I was at the football game. The Blue Jays won that game. I think it was 3-1. And Vladimir Guerrero Jr. actually did hit a home run, and apparently his father, Vladimir Guerrero Sr., or just Vladimir Guerrero, was in the stands, and that was the first time he saw his son hit a home run live. And also, it was interesting that my first Major League Baseball live game involved Vladimir Guerrero Jr. I know my parents, when they went to their first live MLB game, they were in Anaheim for the Anaheim Angels when Vladimir Guerrero was playing for them. So in some way, Vladimir Guerrero plays a role in our first live at games. So I got to explore the, I had plenty of time. Because they let people in like 2 hours prior, and definitely felt the difference between baseball being laid back. I mean, the only professional baseball games I saw live before the two Blue Jay games was the Calgary Cannons and the Pacific Coast League. Back in the day in Calgary, it was a AAA team, so it was a level below. And then independent baseball with the Calgary Vipers, where they weren't affiliated with any major. That was the closest professional baseball that I would get in Calgary, and I don't think Calgary is a big enough market, and we would definitely need an indoor stadium, or at least a retractable roof if we were going to have baseball in Calgary, considering if we have April and games in October, November, if we get, hypothetically, go to the World Series. But I don't think we're a big enough market to have that, but it was nice to see Blue Jay games, and the other things that I saw in Toronto was Nathan Phillips Square, the City Hall. The old City Hall almost feels similar to the old City Hall in Calgary. I'm still not too sure about the design of the current City Hall. I kept thinking, this is a 60s design inspired, and then I saw the fact that it was drawn up and designed in the late 60s. It just had that 60s space theme, and they have those two curved buildings that almost looks like what the world headquarters is for the United Nations in New York. And of course, I had to see Eaton Center. That the roof and that kind of feels like the Eaton Center in Calgary downtown, except the roof is a lot sharper, and a lot of that mall was under construction too in downtown. But the other attractions that I would have wanted to do but didn't get to was I actually did not get to go to CN Tower. I just out of time and only had so much money, and then the few times that I was near there, especially at Blue Jay games, I saw a long lineup outside just to get inside. And I know it was like $47 or $45 if you paid ahead of time to get in for a certain time. It would probably mean to beat a line so I could still wait in line to eventually get up and then be watched like a hawk. It's like we're busy. So that's going to wait till not the summer. And I didn't do Casa Loma because I was busy, and then same with Ripley's, the aquarium. And I did see a lot of potential discounts that were offered, like if you buy a Discovery Pack or even get discounts for Presto. But then I saw not valid from end of June till Labor Day. Of course. But I'm going to say I did enjoy my first ever trip to Toronto. Definitely saw a wide range of people. I'll leave it at that. Wide range of people where they're from in the hostel. And maybe just feel like, I'm just from Calgary. Like I was just staying around the corner by comparison, because I've never been overseas and don't know if I ever will. But I do plan to go back to Toronto for March break, because actually the Calgary Flames are scheduled to play in Toronto on St. Patrick's Day of all days. So I'm hoping that that's when I'll go to Toronto then to see the Flames play on the road, and then have more time to do CN Tower, Casa Loma, see other parts of the city, and maybe potentially join in on one of those activities. Also, assuming I stay at the same sun again, and I would. It definitely gets a pass. I know there's the Planet Hostel as well, almost next door to the same sun that I hear that's like the highest rated hostel in Toronto. And I did also saw the website Hostel World, and most people say if it doesn't have reviews of 8 or higher to avoid, and the same sun did just get over 8. While the Palmerston or the Parkdale Hostelry, they were getting like 5s and 6s, and when I read the reviews, I got a little nervous, but even I admit I was a little nervous even staying in the hostel because I've never done it before, and I kept thinking for years, do I want to stay in a room with a bunch of people snoring and farting, going all the hours a day? And I'm thinking, I'm too conservative to fit in with the crowd, but I still felt like I fit in. Everyone was friendly, the staff, the people, the easiest go-to car to get something started is where you're from, and I guess I gotta stop being surprised when I hear people say, "Yeah, I'm from Australia," or "Oh, I'm from England, I'm from Spain, I'm from France." I'm thinking, yeah, I'm visiting from Calgary, which I'm Canadian, and then I'll be more prepared for people to say, "Yeah, that's west of here." I'll say, "Yeah, it's a little bit west of here," but I think that's all I got for just my first ever trip to Toronto. It only took me 42 years to make it happen. I don't want to be another 42 years. That's if I lived for another 42 years, but it's just, travel gets more expensive. I was able to do it with red tag and pay in installments, and I did sacrifice some privacy to stay in a hostel, but it's worth it, and that's definitely an option I'm going to do now. Maybe that's one thing that's kind of changed, is staying in a hostel to save money, because just like the many younger people, I'm also, a poor traveler, doesn't have much money, that, I might be more established in a career, but I have too many financial obligations too, and, they have their financial obligations, whether school or their travel, but, that's all I have. I mean, I flew out and out of Billy Bishop. I definitely recommend that if you're willing to change flights and see the scenery. It makes sense if you're doing everything in the city. I mean, if you're going to, fly to Toronto and do stuff all over the the GTA area, or all over Ontario, then I guess it would make sense to go to Pearson, because you have more selection of flights in that, and direct from Calgary, but definitely was fun to go to the games, even though I didn't see the Calgary Stampeders win, or Vladimir Guerrero didn't hit a home run, and then the absolute must was see Maple Leaf Gardens and the Hockey Hall of Fame. But I'm hungry to come back to Toronto again to do the CN Tower and see Casa Loma and the Ripley's and maybe a few other museums, because I definitely enjoy doing that as well. But that's all I have. A lot to say for my first ever trip to Toronto. Or what other recommendations would you have? Have you ever been to Toronto? Or maybe I shared some insights for anyone else that's thinking about going to Toronto, and just it is an expensive city. And the other thing you get the shock of is, thankfully being in Alberta, all we pay is the 5% GST goods services tax. I think the homogenized sales tax, I think it's 14% in Ontario. So it's like the same morning pop that I buy, is like 50 cents to $1 more, and I was like, oh yeah, it's because I'm not in Alberta anymore. But it is what it is. And I guess the other thing I want to do the next time I go to Toronto is hopefully be able to walk around, maybe go on a tour in the Ontario legislatures. What kind of gets forgotten is actually Toronto is actually the capital of Ontario. So there's that as well. So anyway, I want to close out. If you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fans journey, just make sure you hit like and subscribe. I have my other social media links down in the description below. And I guess I had to see Berksey Park too, that dog fountain. It was funny to see a bunch of dogs in a fountain. So I have that video as well. So I had to throw that in there. That was near the Hockey Hall of Fame anyway. So as I just want to say, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.